Hello, my name is Anne-Maria Newham. I'm the Executive Director of Nursing, AHPs and Quality. I just thought I'd share a couple of slides with you. I know that you're rushing off to do other things, but I thought I would share my screen with you and just say a little bit about me and who I am. So I started in January 2020 in the organisation, and I've sort of been a director before. I've had 4 director posts before I came to this organisation. Chief nurse post, director of ops, and director of nursing previously as well. So I've worked in Lincolnshire, Leicestershire and Derbyshire, and now Nottinghamshire, and I'm absolutely loving the job here. So I just thought very quickly I would show you the structure that sits underneath me, and you can see here this very important person here, which is the Associate Director of Safeguarding and Social Care, which is Julie Gardner. I've got a typical Director of Nursing structure underneath me, which is a Deputy Director of Nursing, Associate Director of Safeguarding, Associate Director of AHPs, which is Della, and Associate Director of Quality. It's a very typical kind of Director of Nursing portfolio. And underneath these 3 people here, which is the Associate Directors of Nursing, the 3 of them, they sit in each division. So 1 in forensics, one in mental health, and 1 in community. They all have trust-wide responsibilities around restrictive practice, safer staffing, infection prevention, control and tissue viability. But also underneath me sits Paul Sanguinazzi, who's the Head of Patient Involvement and Experience, and he's got a team of people that look at the experience that our patients have of the services we deliver, including carers and families, and also does a lot of work with volunteering as well. And I've got all of the stuff that's around patient safety, CQC, compliance, improvement, so you can see the structure there. So a little bit about me, who am I? So it's nice for you to know who I am, because I represent often yourselves on the board. I am the most senior nurse on the board, and I support nurses, AHPs and social workers on that board. So I am a registered general nurse, I'm a registered sick children's nurse, I'm an EMB 415, which is paediatric intensive care. I've got a BSc honours, and I've got a master's in business administration, which I did at Derby. I was lucky enough to receive 2 scholarships from Florence Nightingale, and I was really interested in the mindfulness session. So one of my scholarships allowed me to go to San Francisco, where I did mindfulness with the Zen Buddhists for 4 days. So I'm very au fait with how to breathe through my nose, and I'm really, really good at engaging with myself and switching off all of those other voices. I've done it many times, and I also was lucky enough to go to New Zealand, and Ruby Wax is very much into mindfulness, and she did a big session with 1,000 people in the audience, which was amazing. So like I said, I got a fellowship from Winston Churchill, and I was invited to talk at the Nursing World Conference in Las Vegas and Rome. I'm also an editor and author for the British Journal of Nursing, and I'm a strong believer in paying it forward. When I say paying it forward, I throw myself off buildings on a regular basis for charity. You can see me there. Yes, I am absolutely bricking it. I can't deny it's not. I don't do it for the pleasure of it. Although I did throw myself off Victoria Falls for the pleasure of it. I was lucky enough in 2019 to receive a Member of British Empire for services to nursing from Prince William, and that is my grandson there. We're both grinning like that because it is freezing and not for any other reason. So I thought I'd do a little bit of horizon scanning for you. Different new leadership. The board is really different at the moment. We've recruited a brand new Executive Director of Community Services, Becky Sutton, a brand new Executive Director of Finance, Facilities, Estates and IT, Lorraine Hooper. We've got a brand new Associate Director of Comms, which is Yolanda Martin. And we've got 2 brand new non-executive directors, Umar and Manjit Darby, who started in December. So there's a tangible difference in the board and that leadership that comes from a board. So my responsibilities are hugely around preparing the organisation for inspections, particularly around CQC inspections. We've recently had some unannounced inspections, and I wanted to talk to you and say to you that if you don't know what closed cultures are at the moment, I really need you to start really thinking about what does that mean for you, and what does that mean for you in your work and how you come to work and the experiences that you receive. So around closed cultures, We've had 5 recent whistleblowers where they've gone directly to the CQC because they did not feel that they could talk to anybody internally. And I want to really emphasise the importance of the Freedom to Speak Up Guardian, which is Simbi Sabanda. And also, what's stopping us improving and what's stopping us going forward. So on one of those unannounced inspections in January, on Friday just gone, they gave us a warning notice and they've also just given us inadequate rating. So I think that there needs to be some diversity in our thinking about how to improve, how to embed, how to sustain, how to come to work and not walk past poor standards and poor care. And so that was my 5 minutes. I got given 5 minutes, and that was just to say thank you very much.
Thank you, Maria. That was a fascinating whistle-stop tour. And when you talk about sort of how to engage further with us, I think perhaps social work, we need to think about closed cultures and our part of that, and how we support the organisation in improving around some of the culture issues. So it's a really great opportunity on World Social Work Day to start connecting together and to really assert our professional identity and to start thinking about who we are across the trust as social workers, because I think it's become apparent that there's a lot more social workers within the trust than people that have social workers in their title. So welcome everyone to the World Social Work Day celebrations, Global Social Work Day it's also called. We will be given time during this session to connect with each other in small groups and to think about what we want going forward to about our relationship to each other and to the trust and the organisation, and how we can improve that. So we will be going into discussion groups, but I wanted to start by thinking about, there was a paper came out last year on it was a piece of work done by Mark Trewin, who was working to support the chief social worker on the guidance on the support of mental health social workers working in the NHS independent and integrated services. And there was a consultation that went out in sort of talking to various people in various roles, thinking about new roles in mental health. And that was across all sorts of organisations and independent and charity sectors. And they produced a document which I will circulate with when we request feedback. But one of the things they did was they produced a film, because what connects us all in this trust is mental health. So I wanted to think about our role as mental health social workers. So we've got a short film which will then sort of lead us into our discussion groups, thinking about us as mental health social workers. So could you show the film, please, Rachel?
Transforming mental health social work is about making social workers feel supported, well-trained and empowered to be able to do their job properly.
What I've been hearing from social workers is that life out there is tough, and they want to be sure they can trust what we're doing.
It's about putting social work at the front and centre of mental health services.
It's not about them doing other people's jobs. Social workers are really good at doing something, getting it done, and then sustaining it. So it's our duty to support them emotionally. It's about retaining, embracing, giving them ongoing support, ongoing education training, giving them career paths that are exciting. This is not impossible, this is entirely possible.
I think there's a lot of energy in the profession, particularly at the moment. It's very important that the current work is happening about transformation of mental health social work.
You will have the same type of leadership if you're always looking in the same type of places. But how can we encourage people to step forward and take the opportunities that are out there for those roles.
We've set up in our trust a social work learning academy.
It was clear that we needed a clear pathway to support all levels of social care and social work workforce within the trust. It was a real sort of fire in everybody's belly about wanting to develop something so wonderful and so brilliant for all our social workers. It is about continued professional development. It is about their aspirations, any barriers that they're facing, and the Social Work Learning Academy is about how we can enable them to move on.
I think having social workers in senior leadership roles and in leadership roles across the organisation means that we are able to take into account those wider social issues and look across organisations.
For me, the principal social work role is key, and the more visible diversity and inclusiveness that role is, I think it would raise the aspirations in social workers coming up.
I was really pleased to have some involvement in the new guidance for NHS organisations and directly employing social workers. Having that guidance to ensure that social workers are supported sufficiently is really important. We've got to make sure that social workers have opportunities for continuing professional development and career opportunities within the NHS.
I think what we wanted to do is to balance the role of the local authority and communities with the role of the NHS, and to try and look for a new model of partnership working.
What's important is that the professional leadership is in place, that the NHS trusts understand the particular requirements of social workers.
In Blackburn with Darwin, we work in an integrated mental health team.
Before the changes were made, as a social worker in the community mental health team, our job role was very much similar to that of a community psychiatric nurse. So we would both be doing exactly the same jobs as care coordinators.
What we've found is that relationships are absolutely key, really, with our health partners. And I think that has been the improvement in those relationships has been the catalyst in enabling some of these changes to happen.
Well, we've got more managers now, and we have a split of nurse managers and social work managers, so I feel like my manager now has got less people underneath her to try to supervise, and also is a specialist social worker, so I've got that side of the supervision. It feels like we're more valued than we were before.
The ethics and principles behind modern social work I strongly believe in, and I believe that these partnerships going forward between the medical, clinical people and people with a social work background is definitely the balance we need. I think for far too long we've not had that balance, and it's been to the detriment of the care of people who have really suffered as a result.
They're experts in knowing what their clients actually need. I want them to be able to go into a room as an equal. I would like them to be leaders. And we will show the rest of health and social care how to do it.
Okay, thank you, folks. So that was a short film sort of thinking about aspirations for social work. You'll now be put into your discussion groups for you to get to know your colleagues around the trust, and then we'll come back together about 22 for a discussion and feedback of some of the things you've covered in the groups. I did wonder whether it might be useful for us to just all put our cameras on at the moment, see how many we can get on screen, and just to sort of try and connect with each other, as many people as we can. And I guess we'll only get 8 or so on camera, but it just gives you a sense of seeing who we are as a group of social workers. I hope it doesn't technology doesn't fail. So I hope that was useful for you, and you've been able to make some connections, some smaller scale connections to people in the small groups. I'm going to ask the facilitators now to feedback. So I think, Heather, you're group 1.
Yep. So we had a really good chat actually. And please, any of my group, add anything if I missed anything. Do you want me to just go through the questions and say kind of what we did, do a little bit of a summary?
Yeah, and perhaps have group 1 on the cameras while group 1 are feeding. So the feedback group can be on the camera while we're feeding back.
Right. So we had Charlotte, Django, who's had to go, and Tara as well. So yeah, please add anything if you want to. So for question 1, we actually we had a group of people who were quite new actually to different roles and within the trust and had changed around. So kind of isolated, and also due to COVID, you know, just feeling lonely and isolated at times, perhaps potentially being like the only social worker in your team, and just feeling like you're that voice and that you don't have other colleagues to go to, or having been in a space or a team where you had lots of other social workers and then it's just a couple of you. So just, yeah, sometimes feeling like you're the one kind of flying that social work flag in your kind of surrounding. And then one of the things actually that we kind of picked up though as a positive, and everyone said this, that they felt very supported by their teams and by their colleagues. And I suppose that kind of goes into the positives of actually everyone said that they felt valued, and that they said that their colleagues that they were working with were open to the social perspective, and they wanted to hear about other ways of working, and they felt valued, and that the work that they were doing was important. So that was really, really kind of lovely to hear. But just again, back to that kind of, but sometimes you're the only one. And then when we talked about support, actually, we talked about, you know, things like today and social work forums, but also keeping relevant as social workers, and actually, you know, networking and keeping fresh and knowing what's going on with the trust and what we're all doing and how we can bring that to our teams, and really making sure that we're up to date with law and legislation and learning, so that actually we're kind of, how I took it was we're kind of being the best social workers in our role. So actually we are then offering that great perspective to our teams as well. So yeah, I think the word was just keeping really relevant and fresh. And I just thought that was a great way of saying that and tapping into all the knowledge and skills that we have within us. And then I think we kind of got cut off at this point, didn't we? But we were saying, yeah, we definitely want to meet regularly. And I think Tara was just kind of saying about actually it being creative, so it doesn't have to be like, you know, on a specific day. Like I know that we obviously wanted to get the ball rolling today, and it is Global Social Work Day, but actually we could meet more regularly, and it doesn't have to be for a set occasion or something, but actually whether that's forums or networking groups or whatever. But yeah, coming together, because I think everyone recognised kind of the support today, and it's been nice to see lots of other social workers from lots of different places. Was that right, Charlotte and Tara? Is there anything else that you wanted to add to that?
No, I think you summarised it really well, Heather.
Thanks.
Great, thank you. So thanks, Heather and Group 1. So can we have Group 2 is, I think, Nikki Gray, and your group.
Hi, yeah, so I'll try and summarise. I was trying to take notes as we went along, but yeah, same as what Heather said. If I've missed anything, then yeah, just jump in. So I think one of the main things that we spoke about, talking about being a social worker within the trust is a lot of people not having social worker within their job title, so people feeling that they're not actually recognised for being a social worker. So there's lots of people with sort of job title of mental health practitioner, but they've very much got the social work values, and they felt they'd prefer to have social worker within their job title so that it is recognised, you know, sort of being proud of being a social worker and having that social work qualification, but sometimes feeling that it gets a little bit lost. In terms of positives for being a social worker within the trust, we spoke about a positive culture of wanting to embrace and grow social workers, and you know, sort of like the think ahead and the having the students with the new ambition coming through is all really really positive. Feeling there's also a lot of experience and feeling valued as a social worker within the trust. In terms of challenges, spoke about sometimes it being difficult to get specialist social work training, and having that opportunity to evolve practice. I'm just trying to think if there was any other challenges. Again, we spoke quite a little bit about the people that felt it was difficult with not having social work within their titles, and that sort of being a challenge for them. In terms of how we felt we could be supported better, one of the things that we discussed was having more specialist reflective supervision, and more training and development opportunities. And then finally, should social workers connect across the trust more, and that was a definite for everybody. I think everyone's you know, so far has really enjoyed connecting with the other social workers today, and again we commented about, you know, having no idea how many social workers there are across the trust, and it's been a really good opportunity, and not just about connecting but influencing more in terms of the uniqueness of the social work role. We spoke quite a lot about, because we had Brogan in our group, who's one of the trainees, so we spoke about shadowing opportunities for students and social workers across the trust and how they feel that would be really important for their development. And I'm not going to claim this comment, Julie. Julie made a really good comment at the end saying that she said that she sees this as being the beginning of a real opportunity, and it will be really nice to keep the positive energy going. And I think someone in our group mentioned we should have a party once COVID's all over, a big social work party. Thank you.
Thanks, Nikki. That's a fabulous idea. I'm going to press on to James for group 3, because I'm just conscious of we're again running up against the clock on this one. Thanks, James.
Thanks, Lynn. Yeah, so just in our group, just to say we had a really good blend of participation. So we had social work trainees who were on the Think Ahead programme, and so it's really good to hear that the Trust are using that initiative to train social workers. And we also had social work from a commissioning point of view, and also from community mental health team and inpatient forensics. So we had a really good blend in our group. And I think one of the things, it's already been discussed, but one of the things that came from our group was around the specialist training needs of social workers. So sometimes coming in from different areas of social work, coming into the NHS, sometimes feels that social work, the specialist needs of social work training, and are not necessarily well thought through, and a lot of the training, it appears more nursing, medical, sort of that way driven, and so we did wonder whether there might be some room or scope for doing sort of training needs analysis of social workers to ensure that, you know, the Trust is offering that and we're not having to always look elsewhere to get that specialist training. We also, one of the themes was that roles sometimes can feel blurred, particularly when you're working with MDTs. You might be the only social worker in that team, So you may feel a little bit more disconnected from the wider social work perspective or sort of social work colleagues. So there might be something in there around, actually, do we need to look at how we support our social work colleagues that are potentially isolated away from other social workers, and also about if social workers are working in sort of teams, who is their supervisor, and do they get clinical supervision from a social worker? Because we felt that that's such an important part, that, you know, that continuing sort of professional development and reflective practice, that actually the people who are not directly supervised by social workers at least get the opportunity to have clinical support and supervision from a social worker. We discussed about having more established networks, so obviously today has been such a good initiative, and as a group of people, you know, we all felt that actually this was really, really good, and we would hope to see this event such as this continue so that we can get a chance to connect across the trust, because I think we were all surprised how many social workers we have, not always directly working as a social worker in the title. Some of the positives of working for the trust or NHS was one that came through was the ability to shape the role in a way that perhaps you might not have that chance if you're working, say, in local authority. So being given more opportunities to do therapeutic social work and involved in therapeutic interventions was something that came from our group, which is one of the positives. Also working sort of with peer support workers within community mental health teams, and working with colleagues more on the social perspective, and challenging MDTs to think about social work perspective. And another positive was that it felt that MDTs were quite receptive of that. And using the holistic approach, that's something that we use more regular in social work, having more transferable skills that we can use to sort of see what other roles are available in the trust, and see how our skills will fit with other roles, because of the transferable skills that we have. I'm just thinking, we did discuss a lot. Is there anyone else from the group that wants to add anything to that? Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Group 3 and James. Angela, Group 4, please.
Right, so we were a select group, so we had a commissioning case manager, we had a social worker, senior social worker at Rampton, and Sean, who is I think a head trainee. So depending, you were either isolated or with other social workers where you could be supported, depending. We talked about how sometimes, depending where you work, it's hard to hang on to your professional identity, depending on where you are. We talked about if you're coming back into a social work role and adjusting to the role of the social work in an MDT. We probably sound a bit more negative, but we were like, do MDTs understand the social work role? So I think we did say that they sometimes value social workers, but also felt that the MDTs don't necessarily understand the social work role itself. The need to raise the profile of social work within the trust. We noticed today that we just had names on the participants, so we didn't get a sense of where people work, and we're not sure which settings we all work in. My assumption was everybody was in forensics until I heard about the Think Ahead and that they're in community teams. So sharing that information, where are social workers based in the trust. We talked about in other areas with integrated care systems that social workers seem to be popping it up more in multidisciplinary teams, but we weren't sure if that was the case in Nottinghamshire. We talked about the mental health practitioner roles and how it can be any discipline, OT, social work, CPN, and so the social work element can be lost. We agreed about keeping a social work forum chat meetings, formal or informal, particularly for those not in specific roles, but for ones that are in a social work team. We did talk about close cultures as well, and how that needs exploring, and what role the social workers have in challenging discrimination, particularly around racial discrimination between patients. And then we talked about social workers being in leadership roles, which came across in the video, in that when you recruit a social worker, it's like we've not got our own category. You're either we're not allied health professionals, because we're not one of the 14 registered professions, but then where do you put a social work post? Do you put it in admin, managerial? There's not a specific, that's probably to do with NHS jobs rather than the trust, but it gives that impression that you're kind of isolated. I don't know if I've missed anything, Jackie and Sean.
No, that's lovely. Thank you very much, Angela. So I'll give the final feedback. We've only got 2 minutes left before the next question will be due to start. So the theme here was in our group, in group one, was that people were new to the trust, apart from me. People were finding the feet, but found the support really, really good, and felt valued as a social worker. Loved the MDT working, and felt they were bringing the social model to the table. In terms of CPD going forward, they felt that a practice forum would be a really positive step. We talked about the benefits of virtual versus face-to-face, and obviously there's problems and benefits with both, but we like the virtual opportunities, but also felt it would be good to get together as a face-to-face. We wanted to be able to share resources, perhaps create a learning community, think about practice educators, and also we wanted to think about mentoring and links with some of the other groups about professional support. So lots of ideas expressed there, and we're going to have a follow-up of to look at the feedback, to think about going forward, and I'm thinking that we may need to have another virtual event before too long, so that we don't lose the momentum. So I want to thank you all for your ideas and your contributions. Thank you to Anne-Maria for staying with us the distance. It's lovely that you've been able to share the whole session with us. And I see this as a start of our journey in building that professional social work identity across the trust. So we've got great sessions for the rest of the day, but I think this is a start of something which we will continue. And thanks to Julie and Anna-Maria for sharing this with us and supporting us with this. You can catch Julie Gardner on at 2:30 to share her professional journey. And we've also got a consultation on the new Mental Health Act, which I think is relevant to all of us. So thank you all, and the 1 o'clock session will be starting. Thank you. Bye.